Hello everyone. Friends, if at all you have any topic which is difficult to understand, please post it in the comment box and we will take up and discuss. Remember friends, knowledge is to share, not to sell and neither to store in oneself. Welcome to IASbaba's Rapid Revision Series for Prelims 2021. This is session 2022 and day 30. And the topics we have are Indian polity, center-state relations and interstate relations. So, these are the hot topics we are going to revise today. First is the right to recall, then the GST Council, then Chief Secretary in the wake of Alan Bandyopadhyaya controversy, then 104th Constitution Amendment Act 2020, Legislative Council, then how are new districts carved, then Article 244 Clause A of the Constitution, then financial emergency, then Article 356, the presidential rule, then Article 254 Clause 2 of the Constitution. Coming to the first one, right to recall. Why was it in news, friends? Because Haryana Assembly passed Haryana Panchayat Raj Second Amendment Bill 2020, which provides the right to recall for the members of Panchayat Raj institution. So, what is the procedure given by the Haryana's bill? It is that 50 members of a ward or Gram Sabha have to give in writing in order to initiate a motion for right to recall. So, once the motion is initiated, then the voting takes place by a secret ballot. So, we will remember secret ballot as a fact because secrecy has to be maintained. And following the voting, if 2/3 members vote against the candidate, then the candidate shall be recalled from his office. So, this is an instrument of direct democracy, and when we discuss about direct democracy, we will take up other instruments of direct democracy for discussion. So, these are the 4 other instruments. Friends, the common in all these things are that they have a public voting and various instruments are voted in different circumstances. First one is the referendum. So, referendum is a public voting taken up for a legal clause or a constitutional clause, might be Brexit or any of such sort. Then citizens initiative. So, any initiative that is in public interest is taken up by the citizen and it is put to vote, and when it gathers public support, it becomes citizen initiative. Then coming to plebiscite. Plebiscite once again is a public voting system wherein the sovereignty of a territory of a land is determined. So, what the people of Scotland are doing now is a plebiscite. Then coming to agenda. So, agenda is that form of public voting wherein any agenda is taken up by the public, and when they vote, then the government has an obligation to take up and consider such issue for the discussion and further implementation. So, these are the 4 instruments of direct democracy. We will remember it and have a brush up and move on. Then coming to the next topic, GST Council. Friends, GST Council was in news because of the 43rd meeting of GST Council was held in New Delhi recently. So, GST was introduced in the 101 or the 101st Constitutional Amendment Act. So, 101st Constitutional Amendment Act provided 2 stages of insertions to the Constitution. In the first stage, new articles, namely Article 246A, Article 269A and Article 279A were introduced, and in the second stage, amendment of Union List and State List contained in the 7th schedule of the Constitution by deleting or modifying certain entries. So, some of the entries in the Union and State List were modified in the wake of the GST bill, and also that some of the definitions in various constitutional clauses were also being taken up. So, those are miscellaneous and they are not of much importance for prelims. So, coming to the first stage, Article 246A. So, what does this do? It gives the power for union and the state legislature to make laws for the central and state GSTs. So, we have 2 GSTs, the CGST and the SGST, and union makes laws for the CGST and state makes the law for the SGST, for the state GST. Then this law has to be done as per the recommendation of the GST Council. So, this has to be taken care before making a law. Then what does Article 269A say, friends? It says that the interstate trade and commerce shall be levied and collected by the centre and appropriated between centre and states as per the recommendation of GST Council once again. So, here again the GST Council comes into picture, and in case of interstate trade and commerce, the tax is levied by the center, collected by the center, and once the center collects all the funds, then it is distributed between center and states as per the proportions. Yes friends, then more about GST Council. Article 279A. Friends, Article 279A precisely provides what is a GST Council and what are the functions of GST Council. So, who are the members? They are Central Finance or Revenue Minister is the member, and Center's Minister of State in charge of Revenue or Finance is also a member, and then Minister of Revenue or Finance of all the states are the members. So, Central Finance Minister, Minister of State Center, Finance or Revenue, and all the finance ministers of the states, they become members of GST Council. Then, what are the functions of GST Council, friends? It is to recommend the tax rates. So, what are different tax slabs and what are the rates? So, the minimum, maximum, all has to be recommended. Then, to recommend the exemptions to the tax rates. So, in cases of some states where the exemption has to be taken up, maybe producing states, consuming states, etc. And also during the times of natural calamities, what the exemption has to be taken up, all those shall be recommended by the GST Council. So, coming to quorum, what is the quorum, friends? It is that minimum 50% of the members of the GST Council have to be present for the GST Council to function, lest the GST Council shall not function. Then, weightage of votes. So, what is the weightage of votes for the center? It is 1/3 of weightage is given for the center and 2/3 is given for all the states together. Or in other words, each state has 2/90th value of a vote. So, there are 30 states. So, 2/3 into 1/30, it is 2/90th of a vote is being carried by a state. Then, majority. So, what is the majority that decides a decision in the GST Council? Is that the 3/4 of the weighted votes. So, 75% of the weighted votes has to be polled in favor of a decision if the GST Council has to take a decision. Then, power to set up mechanisms to adjudicate disputes. So, GST Council not only has this taxation and exemption powers, it also has the adjudication powers or the dispute resolution powers. So, these are the broader functions of the GST Council, and this is all about GST Council regarding the constitutional provisions. Then come to next, Chief Secretary. So, why was it in news, friends? It was in news because resignation of Mr. Alan Bandyopadhyaya IAS, the West Bengal Chief Secretary, hit the hornet's nest in center and state politics. And now coming to the key points. What are the key points regarding the Chief Secretary, friends? He is the senior most civil servant of a state. So, the senior most IAS officer, then he is appointed by the appointment committee of the cabinet. So, the outgoing Chief Secretary, he makes a short list of 4 to 5 senior IAS officers, and the cabinet committee for appointment, it selects one among these 4 to 5 shortlisted candidates. Then come to next, Secretary rank officer. So, Chief Secretary is a Secretary rank officer in the hierarchy of a secretariat. So, in the hierarchy of a secretariat, there are Cabinet Secretary, Secretary, Joint Secretary, Assistant Secretary, Under Secretary, Section Officer, Commissioner, Deputy Commissioner. In this hierarchy, Chief Secretary belongs to the rank of a Secretary or the second rank below Cabinet Secretary. And then he is placed in the 23rd order of precedence. So, what is the 23rd order of precedence, friends? It is that Constitution provides various order of precedence starting from president to the lower officers. So, in that order, the Chief Secretary is placed in the 23rd order of precedence. Then coming to the functions, Chief Secretary is the principal secretary to the CM. So, Chief Secretary is the eyes and ears of the CM. He is a friend, philosopher, guide. He provides secretarial assistance to the CM, like he will prepare the speeches of the CM, he will make ready the CM for the debates and the assembly discussions and other important decisions. Then he is also secretary to the state cabinet. So, whenever the state cabinet is going to meet, he will fix the agenda, he will circulate the agenda, he will minute whatever the discussion is going there, then he will circulate the decision and he will make sure that the decision that is taken in the cabinet is implemented. Then he is also the secretary to the General Administration Department. So what is General Administration Department, friends? So GAD is the state counterpart of DOPT. So what the Department of Personnel and Training is in center, the General Administration Department is in the state, and Chief Secretary is the secretary of this department as well. So in other words, Chief Secretary looks into recruitment, training, postings and promotions of all the government employees as a secretary to the General Administration Department. Then he is the chairman of State Civil Service Board. So Civil Service Board was set up as per a Supreme Court judgment, and this board caters to the postings and promotions of senior officers starting from the secretary to the commissionerate level. So here as well, Chief Secretary acts as a chairman of the Civil Service Board and he looks after the postings and promotions of the senior level IAS officers in the Secretariat of the state. Then chairman of Crisis Management Group. So what is Crisis Management Group, friends? So every state and even the center has a crisis management group which caters to the disaster and other acts of God. So Chief Secretary as a chairman of the crisis management groups looks after the relief and rehabilitation of the victims. So this is all about a Chief Secretary. Then come to next 104th Constitution Amendment Act 2020. So this amendment was done the last year and that is why it becomes important. So what are the key points of this amendment? Here the reservation of seats for the members from scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in Lok Sabha and the state legislative assemblies was extended by a period of 10 years. So we know that this is being extending since 1970 and once again it got extended this time as well. Then the amendment does not, however, extend the period of reservation of 2 Lok Sabha seats reserved for the members of Anglo-Indian community. So the reservation for Anglo-Indian community stands to be abolished from henceforth. And in this context, what are the times when the extension took place in the past becomes important. So Article 334 originally provided that the reservation of seats for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes has to end by 1960. But however, 8th Amendment Act or 8th Constitutional Amendment Act, it extended the reservation till 1970s. 23rd Amendment Act did it till 1980s. 45th Amendment Act did it till 1990s and 62nd Amendment Act did it till 2000. And later 79th Amendment Act extended it till 2010 and 95th Amendment Act extended it till 2020. So now 104th has done it till 2030. So we will remember this as 8234562795. 8234562795. Once again 8234562795 as a phone number if you remember, because the constitutional amendments are being asked in the question. So 1 year it was asked like who was the Prime Minister of India when the first amendment was taken up. So in that way these years and the amendments will become important. Then come to next, legislative councils. So why was it in news, friends? Because West Bengal cabinet approves for setting up of a legislative council. So currently West Bengal doesn't have a legislative council. So a resolution was passed and in this case the legislative councils will become important. So now what are the constitutional provisions for the legislative council? The procedure is that, so as per Article 169, if state legislative assembly passes a resolution with a special majority, so the special majority has to be taken care here. So the resolution has to be passed with the 2/3 majority of the house present and voting and more than 50% of the total membership of the house. And then once the resolution is passed in the state assembly, that resolution is taken up by the parliament, and if the parliament with simple majority, if it passes the same resolution, then the legislative council stands to be established. And also in order to revoke a legislative council, the procedure is same. So that is, if the state legislative assembly passes a resolution to revoke a state legislative council with the same special majority, and if the parliament takes it up and passes the same with a simple majority, then the state legislative council stands to be abolished. So for the removal and establishment, the procedure is same, that is, the special majority by the state legislative assembly and a simple majority by the parliament. Yes friends, then strength of the house. So article 171 clause 1 says that the strength of the house or the strength of state legislative council shall not exceed 1/3 of the total number of members in the legislative assembly. So if there are 300 members in the state legislative assembly, then the members of the state legislative council shall not be more than 100. So now, what if the number of members in the state legislative assembly are 90? So is it 30? 1/3? No, because the article 171 clause 1 says that the minimum number should not be less than 40. So if the case is 30, we will round it up to 40. So minimum 40 and maximum 1/3 of the number of members present in the state legislative assembly. So I don't think this is a difficult. Then in the same time, we will revise which are the states which have a legislative council. Andhra Pradesh has it, Maharashtra has it, Bihar has it, Uttar Pradesh has it, Karnataka has it, and Telangana has it. So we can conceptualize this by a jargon saying that हमारे माँ बुखार में भी उठकर खाना तैयार करती है. हमारे माँ, A for Andhra, M for माँ, बुखार बिहार, then उठकर उत्तर प्रदेश, खाना कर्नाटका, तैयार तेलंगाना. हमारे माँ बुखार में भी उठकर खाना तैयार करती है. So every mothers of us, they do that, we will remember likewise. Then come to next, more about the legislative council. So how are the members of legislative council of a state are elected? So 1/3 of the members are elected by the members of legislative assembly. So this is done by proportional representation with a open ballot. So we will remember this open ballot. Then 1/3 further are elected by members of municipalities, district boards, and other local authorities. So the local representation constitutes remaining 1/3. Then 1/12 are elected by an electorate consisting of teachers. So 1/12 by the teachers' constituencies, and then further 1/12 by the graduates' constituencies. So these two will form 1/6. So remaining 1/6 are nominated by the governor. So they are nominated amongst those citizens who have done exceptional achievements in the fields of science, art, literature, public welfare, or any of that sort. Yes friends, so this is how the membership of legislative council is constituted. And lastly, legislative councils are permanent houses. And like Rajya Sabha, 1/3 of their members retire every 2 years. So it is a permanent house, unlike a legislative assembly or a Lok Sabha, which will be dissolved. Coming to the next topic, how are new districts carved? So the procedure to carve out a new district. Why was it in news friends? Because Malarkotla, the Punjab's only Muslim majority town, has become state's 23rd district. So in this way, this will become important. Now the procedure to carve out a new district are as follows. The power to carve or alter a new district rests with the states. So center has no role in carving out a district. Then either by law or by executive order, a state can carve out a district. So both the procedures are approvable. Most probably states will resort to the executive order because it is easier. Come to next, power of a state to carve a district is suspended during delimitation. So when the delimitation is going on, you cannot carve out a district or alter a boundary of a district. However, the change of name of a district has to be taken up only after the clearance of the central government is given. So in changing the name, central government comes into picture. So now these are some of the departments in the central government whose clearance has to be taken up to change the name of a district. So, which are they? It is Ministry of Earth Sciences, Intelligence Bureau, Department of Posts, Geographical Survey of India and Railway Ministry. So, coming to next, Article 244 Clause A of the Constitution. So, where was it in news, friends? Because the demand for an autonomous state within Assam has been raised in Assam under this article of the Constitution many times before. Now, a brief background regarding Article 244 Clause A. Friends, in 1950s, a demand for a separate hill state was taken up by some of the hilly sections of the tribal people of Assam. So, as this movement intensified, Meghalaya or the tribal population in Meghalaya, they gained statehood in 1972. But however, for the people of Karbi Anglong and North Kachar Hills, a compromise clause was set up. So, that is, if they want to stay in Assam, so Article 244 Clause A was given as a compromise clause, and this was added by 22nd Constitution Amendment Act 1969. So, that is how Article 244 Clause A came into picture in the Constitution. Now, what are the provisions of Article 244 Clause A? It empowers the Constitution for creation of a local legislature or council of ministers or both to carry out local administration. Then you will have to provide lawmaking powers, taxation powers and executive powers of administration. So, financial, execution and legal powers have to be vested in those legislative assemblies or the councils. Then it provides more autonomous powers to the tribal areas than the 6th schedule. So, in the 6th schedule, the autonomous district council are being established, and these autonomous district council don't have the jurisdiction of law and order. But however, the legislature set up under Article 244 Clause A, they have the jurisdiction of law and order. So, this one additional clause makes Article 244 Clause A much more powerful than 6th schedule. So, this is all about Article 244 Clause A of the Constitution. Then come to next, financial emergency or the Article 360. So, it was in news because experts, they suggested financial emergencies to wade through the COVID-19 situations. And now Article 360 becomes important. Now, as per the article, if the President is satisfied that financial stability or the credit facility of India is in danger, then President can proclaim a financial emergency. And however, it must be approved by both the houses of the Parliament within 2 months of proclamation. So, this 2 months is not similar or the same for all kinds of emergencies. We will revise here itself that for the national emergency, the Parliament has to approve the proclamation within 1 month, and for a state emergency or a presidential rule, the approval has to be given within 2 months. So, making out the difference, we move on. Then, a proclamation issued under Article 360 may be revoked or varied by a subsequent proclamation. So, the President himself can remove the financial emergency by providing a subsequent proclamation. Then, a financial emergency shall cease to operate at the expiration of 2 months unless it has been extended by resolution of both the houses of the Parliament. So, if it is being not revoked within 2 months, it will automatically abolished if the Parliament doesn't approve it within 2 months. And now once again, this is different from a national emergency and a presidential rule. For national emergency, it is 6 months. That is, the Parliament can extend or the Parliament can approve the extension of national emergency by 6 months. And in the presidential rule, again Parliament can extend by 6 months and not more than 3 years. Yes, friends. Then come to next, effect of financial emergencies. So, what are the effects? The union government may give direction to the states regarding financial matters. So, regarding all financial matters, union government becomes the friend philosopher guide to the state governments. Then, President may ask the states to reduce the salaries and allowances of the person in government service. So, almost all the government officials can have a reduction in the salaries whenever the financial emergency is in operation. Then, President may ask the states to reserve all the bills for the consideration of Parliament after they have been passed by the state legislature. So, all the money bills which cater to the finances will have two stages of scrutinies. One is by the state legislature and the second by the central legislature or the Parliament. Then, reduction of salaries and allowances of central government employees, including judges of Supreme Court and the High Courts. So, even the judicial officers, they have a reduction in the salaries. Then, come to the next. Article 356 or the presidential rule was in news because central government had contemplated Article 356 to be imposed on Madhya Pradesh in the wake of its hung mandate it provided recently. Now, the key facts are: if the president receives a report from the state's governor or otherwise is convinced that a state cannot be governed as per the constitution, he shall proclaim a state emergency to that state. So, he can receive a report from the governor, or even without a report from the governor, a president can proclaim a presidential rule. Then, if any state fails to comply with all directions given by the union on matters it is empowered to. So, any violation in the directions given by the center will be amenable to the presidential rule. But however, the directions given by the center should be confined to those areas where the union has the power to give the direction, not otherwise. Then, the proclamation of president's rule should be approved in both the houses of the parliament within 2 months of its issue. So, once the president proclaims a presidential rule, the parliament has to approve it within 2 months. Coming to next, president's rule sustains for a period of 6 months. That is, once president proclaims a presidential rule, then the parliament has to approve it every 6 months. And also that a parliament can extend the presidential rule only for a maximum period of 3 years. More than that, it cannot. And then, come to next, the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act says that it can be extended beyond 3 years. But there are conditions, that is, if there is a national emergency in India, or the Election Commission of India certifies that it is necessary to continue the president's rule in the state because of difficulties in conducting assembly elections to the state. So, on the basis of two conditions, that is, in case of a national emergency or in case of difficulties in conducting an assembly election, the presidential rule can be extended by the parliament beyond 3 years. So, 6 months once and beyond 3 years on the basis of these two conditions. Then, effect on administration. What are the effects on administration regarding presidential rule? It is, governor carries on with the administration of the state on behalf of the president. So, president and the governor, they become the sole executive authorities in the state. Then, state legislature's power would be exercised by the parliament. Now, the parliament becomes the legislative wing of the state. Then, state legislative assembly would be either suspended or dissolved by the president. So, president has both the options, that is, he can keep the legislative assembly in the suspended animation, or he can dissolve the legislative assembly altogether. Then, when parliament is not in session, president can promulgate ordinance with respect to the state's administration. So, once he promulgates the ordinance, it must be approved within 2 months, that's it. So, this is all about president's rule or Article 356. Then coming to next, Article 254 Clause 2 of the Constitution. So, why was it in news, friends? Because Congress contemplated to counter the Citizenship Amendment Act via Article 254 Clause 2. So, what does this article provide when the Congress is countering a law of the Union government? So, we will begin with Article 254 Clause 1 first. So, this says that in case of repugnancy between center and state regarding a law made by the state for a subject in the concurrent list, center's law shall prevail. So, in the concurrent list, if the state is making a law and if that is against a union law, then center's law shall prevail over the state's law. But however, Article 254 Clause 2 says that where a law made by the legislature with respect to the same concurrent list, and if any provision is repugnant to the provisions of the law made by the Parliament, such a law shall prevail if it has been reserved for the consideration of the President and has received his assent. So, if the President gives his assent, then the state law shall prevail over the centre's law if there is any repugnancy. Then, however, Parliament can enact a law to amend or repeal such a law any time. So, just because President gives his assent, the state law will not prevail for perpetuity. Parliament can repudiate it or it can downturn it with a subsequent enactment of a law. So, this is all about Article 254 Clause 2. So, the Congress government says that we will have a separate law in Assam government and we will pass it under Article 254 Clause 2, so that law will prevail over the Citizenship Amendment Act, which is a union made law, and we will update this as and when the news arise. Come to the last part. Friends, only 2% of the population of the world are dream chasers. Others are mere complacent people. Oscar Wilde says, we are not living, we are only existing. So, living takes a huge cost. So, living means, as per Oscar Wilde, is hunting down your dreams. So, hunt down the dreams, race to the zenith and come out with great success. All the very best, friends. Good luck.